Hopefully this video will be the last in this little barrage of videos that have come your way from me. The last two videos that I did dialed in specifically on grip, a hugely important aspect of what you physically do at the table. So I just felt like I would be remiss if I didn't go ahead and put the idea of stroking the ball within the context of an overall structure. So when I think of stroke structure, I think of professional stroke structure, something that you should all strive toward obtaining. It's not difficult to do. Jerry Bryseth back in the 80s defined stroke structure for the first time in a very understandable way. He described it as a beautiful throwing motion. Within the context of that beautiful throwing motion, he would demonstrate three positions: the set position, the pause position, and the finish position. Well, in order to properly understand your stroke, a professional instructor, PBIA instructor, perhaps one within the SPF group, Randy Gottlicker or Scott Lee, there's others, I'm a member of that group, can take a look at your stroke. And instead of looking at your stroke from a broad perspective, they can narrow it down to the set position, to the pause position, or to the finish position, and then help you with whatever your profile might call for. Perhaps you just need work on the set position. Perhaps it's in your backswing. Perhaps it's in your finish. Perhaps it's all three. So I just want to delve into this just a little bit and emphasize the importance of stroke. I teach centered edge aiming a lot, and a lot of you think that I am perhaps one-dimensional and that everything's all about aiming. No, pool is a visual, physical endeavor. I understand that quite well, and I've been teaching stroke, professional stroke structure, for several decades. So I just want to, out of my 100 or so videos that I have on YouTube, I don't think I have a single video that gets into some of the details that are important concerning the execution of a stroke. So I've put 3 dots on this table: a dot for the cue ball, a dot for the follow-through finish position, and then a dot for the object ball. Now, the set position is the most important position that you're going to have when you're stroking, but your cue's not even moving. In other words, we're talking about alignment. So when you're in that set position, you're basically dealing with angle, speed, and spin. For me, I'm thinking of the angle part as being twofold. The angle that I'm using for my centered edge perception, and then the angle that I use for my cue during my presentation at the table. And then I'm certainly aware of speed, and I'm aware of spin. Now, I'm not going to talk about my tip position so much here, and I'm not going to talk about the spin position much here, because I'm just going to highlight stroke structure, professional stroke structure. So when you're presenting yourself at the table, and I think I'm not going to spend much time with stance. Basically with stance, this right leg for a right-handed player is going to intersect this shot line in some way, and this left leg is going to be essentially parallel with the shot. So that's pretty standard. I'm not going to show that here. Concerning practice strokes, when my tip is still at the cue ball, I'm looking at the entire shot line. When my cue is moving, I'm looking at the cue ball only. I can cycle through that as many times as I like before I go into that final reset for my final set position prior to stroke delivery. So when I set up on this shot, I'm going into this very important set position. So in this set position, one thing that's really critical is to have your hand essentially under your elbow, perhaps an inch or so in. Because your hand is constantly going up and down during your stroke. It's at the bottom of that pendulum position where you get that linear movement through the cue ball. You get a level cue traveling through the cue ball. That's why you don't want to have your hand too far in or back of perpendicular. So I'm going to use this pre-cocked wrist position for the most part, I think, during this presentation, because it allows me to accelerate through that cue ball, whether it's a hard shot or even a soft shot, in such a way that I can finish in that classic position with air to the palm and knuckles up. So I'll just go into this set position. And so I've got a pretty strong alignment right here. Now, if my cue's still as it is, I can look up and down the shot line. If my cue is moving, then I'm looking at the cue ball only. So I can cycle through that ever how many times I need to. That's a personal preference. Everybody's a little bit different with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk about the backswing a little bit. The backswing is typically more to the slow side than the quick side. The quick side can create problems in that if you go too quick, you can create a jerk at the end of the backswing that can throw you out of alignment a little bit. So the speed of your backswing should be such that you can manage the transition smoothly into your foreswing. So the best timing, and once again Jerry Bryseth shared this with me, and I agree with him, the best timing for your backswing it can be described as once you get to the end of your backswing and stop, then you go. So once that you recognize you stop, then you go. So it's not something as to where you want to go back there and just stop and hang around back there. Jerry, Buddy Hall, and Allison Fisher had the stop positions at the end of the backswing that are pronounced a little bit, and that's perfect timing for them. And if you did that, that would be good timing for you. But perhaps a more perfect timing would be once you realize you stop, then you go. So you're not going to go wrong with either one of them. But the more natural transition is in the form of just a beautiful throwing motion. So there's not really that stop position back there that is perceptible. So during the time that I'm doing that backswing, I want my upper arm to be still. My stroke is pinned at my elbow. That way I have a tricep bicep movement. It just so happens that your elbow is a hinge joint, and if you get lined up correctly, then your elbow opens and closes in a straight line. If we had a ball and socket joint right here, I probably wouldn't be doing this. So fortunately our bodies have cooperated with us as far as this game of pool goes, in that we're gifted with a hinge joint right here for playing this game. So you want to isolate that upper arm. Now I'm not saying that there's not a stroke structure out there that can be used for this type of movement. There is. I can play with that type of stroke structure and play with it very well, but I know what the most accurate stroke structure that there is. It's this very simplistic set, pause, finish. Very simplistic. That's what you want to learn. That's how you want to present yourself at the table, particularly when you're learning the game. Now, if the set position is the most important part of the stroke, then what's the goal of your stroke? What are you trying to accomplish? You're trying to accomplish a good finish. Well, what is a good finish? It's when I can deliver this cue. It's when I can throw this cue beautifully through the cue ball in a straight line for this particular shot. So what does that mean? That means that I'm staying down on the shot, I'm not raising up, I'm continuing to keep my arm pinned, my hand is coming up to my chest. I like for my hand to hit my chest at the finish. That's my trigger that I've finished the stroke. As my hand comes up, the front end of the cue goes down. If I'm shooting a draw shot, my tip will go to the table. If I'm shooting a follow shot, my tip will go toward the table. I don't want my tip to ever rise above its presentation at the cue ball higher than that. So if it goes up in the air, I know something has failed me in my upper arm or shoulder, perhaps even a just complete collapse. So that's rare for me these days, but it can happen. So let's put all that together. And I'm not going to put a lot of emphasis on practice strokes and stance. We're just going to get into the actual stroke. So there's my set position. So I observed my cue at finish. It's pretty straight. I hit the ball pretty hard because I want to test my stroke a little bit. So I'll do that again. Set. So I'm staying down. My hand hit my chest. My upper arm didn't come down. I observe my cue. My cue's in this position. Straight over the dot. Something else that you want to do is notice your hand position at finish. So my knuckles are up. There's air to the palm. I caught the cue with the back of my hand lightly. I've only learned to really be able to do that like I want to since I've learned to pre-cock my wrist. So I continue to bring that up because it's been a very positive aspect for me. So I'm moving into my set position. I want to make sure my set position is perfect before I ever begin any practice swings. So when I do a practice, so right now my cue is still, so I'm looking at the shot line. Now, here I'm looking at the cue ball. So I can cycle through that as many times as I want. Then I work my way back to the set position. So that's a pretty hard stroke. I'm maintaining a good stroke delivery to the finished position, straight. It's not going right, it's not going left, it's in the down position. So you want to learn to sort of have a checklist when you're practicing. Ask yourself about your set position. Ask yourself about your backswing. Observe your finish. Now, what I suggest you do is talk your way through your stroke structure. Sports psychologists will say that you'll learn stroke structure 30% quicker if you talk yourself through a new skill such as this. So I'm going to use just a firm stun type grip here. Set. Slow back pause. Finish. Freeze. So my hand's at my chest, my arm didn't drop, my head didn't raise. My cue is almost touching the table. It's dead straight over the spot. And I got good feedback from the cue ball. I'll do that again. So once you get set, slow back pause, finish, freeze. Now, of course, what you're seeing here is an exaggeration. Exaggeration is a very important principle in teaching. So, you don't have to be a professional player to exhibit strong stroke structure at the table. You can present yourself with professional stroke structure at the table if you can be identified playing with a set, pause, finish. That is professional stroke structure. Once again, set, slow back pause, finish, freeze. So, I'm more than just a one-dimensional instructor. I don't just teach center to edge aiming and ignore the value of stroke. I put a lot of emphasis into it. I understand stroke very well. But the most important part of stroke is alignment. I had trouble aligning. Consequently, I worked my way into center to edge aiming. Now my alignment is better than ever. The most important part of my stroke is my alignment. My cue's not even moving, and I owe it to center to edge aiming. So I'm not saying you have to go to center to edge aiming. I'm just sharing my experiences with you. Now, you might be. Here's one thing that you can do. I'm going to do this sideways, but you can do it lengthways on the table. You don't even have to have a ball to shoot at. Just free yourself up from an object ball and set yourself up to a pocket. Get a good set position, and then set, slow back pause, finish, freeze. Stroke structure. Where does the mental game come from in pool? It's a result of having a good visual physical game. Get your physical game right. Get your visual game right. Get those two games right, and your mental game will emerge. You'll feel good at the table. Your confidence will surge. But if you go to the table and you're not for sure what you're looking at, and you have doubts about your stroke, you're certain to have some lapses in good mental thinking. You want to be confident in what you're doing. So you have to present yourself at the table in such a way that you feel good about it, visually and physically. So I'm going to pre-cock my wrist on this one. So my wrist is pre-cocked here. Set. Slow back pause. Finish. Freeze. So you can do that. When I'm working with students, I usually have them to get in this position right here and just set up to that corner pocket without an object ball. Talk their way through the stroke. So you got set, slow back pause, finish, freeze. You're not going to develop good stroke structure just competing. You need some dedicated time at the practice table and typically under the direction of a good instructor. So check your PBIA list of instructors out and have them to professionally analyze your stroke and give you a plan. I know that Randy and Scott have what they call the mother drills. There's 7 of them. You're not going to find anything any stronger that's going to help you put your stroke together than those 7 mother drills. So what you saw here is just a glimpse of where you can go with your stroke. You want to feel good about what you're doing at the table. That means visually and physically. So I've got all these videos on YouTube, but I don't have a single one about stroke. So I thought, it's time just to balance it out a little bit. 1 out of 100. So once again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And I don't think there's going to be another video for a while. Appreciate it.